The salesman's voice echoed through the glossy showroom as he sneered, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We don't have anything in here you can afford. Maybe try somewhere cheaper?" Heads turned. The laughter of two other salesmen followed. And in the center of it all stood David Carter, a calm black man in simple clothes, gripping his car keys in silence. But what no one knew, not the salesman, not the gawking customers, not even the dealership manager, was that David wasn't there to buy a car. He was there to decide who would own the dealership by the end of the week. And when the truth came out, it would leave everyone trembling. It had started as an ordinary morning. David, dressed in a plain hoodie and jeans, strolled into one of the city's most prestigious luxury car dealerships. Gleaming sports cars sparkled under showroom lights, their polished frames screaming wealth and status. But to David, cars weren't just machines. They were memories of the days when his father worked double shifts just to fix a broken-down engine so they could get to school. Now, as a successful entrepreneur, David was looking to buy a fleet for his company. But appearances can deceive. From the moment he stepped inside, he noticed the looks. The receptionist gave a forced smile before quickly glancing away. Two salesmen at the corner chuckled as he walked by, whispering under their breath. Then came Mark Reynolds, the senior salesman, sharp suit, slick hair, arrogance dripping from every word. Mark: Sir, the used car lot is down the road. This showroom is, well, out of your range." David's brows furrowed, but he stayed calm. "David, I'd like to see the new Phantom series and the SUV models." Mark laughed, actually laughed, before waving dismissively. "Listen, I don't mean to waste your time or ours. We take serious buyers here. You understand, right?" By now, a small crowd had formed. Customers and junior staff were watching, some with smirks, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Then came Mark Reynolds, the senior salesman. Sharp suit, slick hair, arrogance dripping from every word. Mark: Sir, the used car lot is down the road. This showroom is, well, out of your range." David's brows furrowed, but he stayed calm. "I'd like to see the new Phantom series and the SUV models." Mark laughed, actually laughed, before waving dismissively. "Listen, I don't mean to waste your time or ours. We take serious buyers here. You understand, right?" By now, a small crowd had formed. Customers and junior staff were watching, some with smirks, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Then Mark Reynolds, the senior salesman, sharp suit, slick hair, arrogance dripping from every word. "Mark," Angela whispered nervously. "Mark, maybe we should," but Mark cut her off. "Stay out of this. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know who's serious and who's wasting my time." And with that, he turned his back on David. The humiliation was complete. Customers were staring. David could have walked out quietly, swallowed the insult, and disappeared. But he didn't. David reached slowly into his bag and pulled out a folder. He placed it gently on the counter. "David, then maybe this will convince you I'm serious." Mark rolled his eyes, but opened the folder. His smirk vanished almost instantly. Inside were legal documents, company seals, and a contract of sale, one that bore the dealership's very name. David locked eyes with him. "David, I'm not here to buy a car. I'm here because as of next week, I own this place." The room froze. Gasps echoed. Angela's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Customers looked at each other in disbelief. And Mark? His face went pale, the blood draining from it as his arrogance crumbled. The manager rushed out of his office, having overheard the commotion. "Mr. Carter? We weren't expecting you until next week." David turned slowly, his calm voice cutting sharper than any shout. "And I wasn't expecting my future staff to treat people this way. If this is how you handle strangers, I wonder how many potential customers you've driven away." Mark opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, he wasn't the man in control. He was the man about to lose everything. This story reminds us never judge someone by their clothes, their skin, or your assumptions. Respect costs nothing, but disrespect, it can cost you everything. David walked into that dealership underestimated, mocked, and insulted. But by the time he walked out, justice had been served, not with anger, but with truth. But just when David thought the ordeal was over, an envelope slid under his office door that night. No name, no return address. Inside was a single message, typed in bold letters: "Leave the dealership or else." David stared at the note, his calm composure breaking for the first time, because this wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about survival. The note on David's desk was short, but its message was deadly clear. Leave the dealership or else. For the first time, the calm man who had faced humiliation with dignity felt a chill run through his bones. This wasn't just about cars anymore. It was about power, and someone willing to destroy everything to keep it. Days after David's shocking revelation at the dealership, things seemed to return to normal on the surface. Customers flowed in. Angela, the trainee saleswoman, began proving herself with honesty and respect. But then the whispers started. A rumor spread that David had forced the sale of the dealership, that his company was shady, that he was nothing more than a fraud with deep pockets. When David confronted the manager, the man shrugged nervously. "Manager, I don't know where it's coming from, Mr. Carter, but it's spreading fast. Even some of the staff, they're questioning if you belong here." And just like that, the battlefield shifted. It wasn't long before the sabotage began. One morning, David arrived to find angry customers waiting outside. A client's luxury car had been returned with scratched paint and missing parts. Another stormed in, claiming their payment had been lost, though David knew the books were clean. Security footage revealed the truth. Someone inside was tampering with vehicles, falsifying records, and framing David. And when he slowed the footage down, he froze. There, in the corner of the screen, was Mark Reynolds, the same salesman who had humiliated him. David called Mark into his office. "David, firm. I gave you a chance to redeem yourself after the way you treated me, but instead, you're trying to burn this place down. Why?" Mark leaned back in the chair, smirking with arrogance. "You don't belong here. You may have money, but you'll never fit here. This dealership is ours, always has been, always will be, and I'll make sure everyone sees you for what you are, an outsider." David clenched his fists, but stayed composed. "No, Mark, I don't need to fit your image. What I need is to run this business with dignity, something you clearly don't understand." Mark laughed mockingly. "Dignity doesn't sell cars, power does, and I've got more of it in this place than you ever will." David knew exposing Mark outright wouldn't be enough. If he fired him, Mark would play the victim and spin the story. No, he needed to let Mark reveal his own corruption. So David set a quiet trap. He arranged a fake exclusive deal with a wealthy client, leaving just enough bait for Mark to overhear. The deal was staged with hidden cameras, designed to catch any tampering. And sure enough, Mark took it. He tried to pocket the down payment, forging David's signature. When confronted, Mark's arrogance finally shattered under the weight of undeniable evidence. At a staff meeting the next morning, David played the footage for everyone to see. Gasps echoed as Mark's scheme unfolded on the screen. Angela whispered to a colleague, tears in her eyes. "Angela, he was the one all along." David turned to his staff. "This dealership will not be built on arrogance, lies, or hate. If we are to succeed, it will be because we respect every person who walks through those doors. If that's too much to ask, then this isn't the place for you." The room was silent. Then one by one, staff began to nod. Some even clapped.
For the first time, the tide had turned in David's favor. But just when it seemed Mark's downfall was complete, the story took a darker turn. That night, as David locked up the dealership, headlights flared across the parking lot. A car revved its engine, screeching dangerously close before swerving away at the last second. The driver's window rolled down, and there, smirking from the shadows, was Mark Reynolds. Mark, shouting, "You think this is over? You haven't seen anything yet!" The tires screeched as he sped away into the night. David stood frozen, realizing this wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal.
The screech of tires still echoed in David's mind. Mark's threat wasn't just words anymore. It was a promise. And soon, that promise would put everything David had worked for on the line. The next morning, David walked into the dealership with calm composure, but inside, his heart was heavy. He knew Mark wasn't bluffing. Angela noticed the tension in his eyes. "Mr. Carter, are you okay?" David gave a faint smile. "I'll be fine. But this dealership, it may not be safe for long." By the end of the week, the sabotage had escalated. Negative reviews flooded online platforms, claiming David's dealership scammed customers. Flyers appeared in the neighborhood labeling him a fraud and outsider. The damage was clear. Sales dropped and loyal customers hesitated. At a meeting with his board of investors, one member leaned forward with concern. "David, this backlash is hurting the brand. Are you sure you can handle this?" David's jaw tightened. "Yes, but only if we stand together. The truth always wins." But deep down, he wasn't so sure anymore. Late one night, as David was leaving the office, he heard the shattering of glass. He rushed back inside and froze. The showroom windows had been smashed. Spray painted across the floor-to-ceiling glass were the words, "Go home." And lying in the middle of the showroom was a brick wrapped in a note. "You'll never belong here. Walk away, or else." David's hands trembled as he picked it up. For the first time, he wondered if maybe Mark was right. Maybe this battle wasn't worth the cost. But then, Angela stepped into the broken showroom. She had returned after hours to pick up her bag, and when she saw the destruction, tears filled her eyes. Angela, softly, "Mr. Carter, this isn't just about you. This is about us. People like me. People who've been told we don't belong. If you walk away now, then Mark wins, and people like him keep winning." David looked at her, stunned. In her words, he saw his father's determination, his mother's resilience, and his own reflection. His doubt hardened into resolve. David, firm. "No, Mark doesn't win. Not this time, not ever." The next day, David announced a new policy: transparency. Every car deal, every service order, every customer review would be tracked and displayed publicly on screens inside the dealership. It was bold, it was risky, but it was honest. Customers started trickling back, impressed by the change, and slowly, trust began to rebuild. But Mark? He was furious. His sabotage was slipping through his fingers. That night, David's phone buzzed with a message, a photo. It was Angela, tied to a chair in a dark room, and beneath it the words, "Your move." David's breath caught in his throat. This was no longer about humiliation or business or reputation. This was about lives. Mark had crossed the final line. David clenched his fists, his calm mask breaking for the first time. He whispered, "God help him if he's touched her." The screen fades to black, with one question lingering in the air. What would David do now?
The photo burned in David's hands, Angela tied up, fear in her eyes. Mark's threat scrawled beneath, "Your move."
This was no longer about cars, business, or pride. This was a battle for justice. And David knew, if he stayed silent, he would lose more than just a dealership. David wasted no time. He called the police, but with Mark's connections and influence in the city, he knew it might not be enough. So he devised a plan, one that would expose Mark publicly, leaving him nowhere to hide. Using security trackers and Angela's phone signal, David traced her location to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. And when he arrived, he wasn't alone. He brought the police, and reporters tipped off anonymously. Because this time, Mark's cruelty would be on display for the world to see. Inside the warehouse, Mark stood with his usual smugness, pacing in front of Angela. Mark, mocking. "So, the great Mr. Carter finally shows his face. Tell me, how's it feel to know you don't belong in my world?" David stepped forward, voice calm, but filled with steel. "David, your world? Mark, you've spent your whole life trying to prove you're better than others, but all you've proven is how small you really are." Mark's face twisted with rage. "Mark, shut up! You think money buys you respect? You think owning this dealership makes you one of us? You'll never be one of us." David took a slow step closer, eyes locked. "You're right, Mark. I'll never be like you, and thank God for that." Before Mark could respond, red and blue lights lit up the warehouse windows. Police stormed in, cameras flashing behind them. Angela was quickly untied, tears streaming as she clung to David. Mark stumbled backwards, his arrogance finally shattering as officers closed in. Mark panicked. "No! You don't understand! This is a mistake! He doesn't belong here! I belong here!" But his cries fell on deaf ears, because for the first time, the world was watching him for who he truly was. A week later, the dealership stood stronger than ever. Customers poured in, not just to buy cars, but to support the man who had turned humiliation into honor. Angela, now promoted, stood proudly by David's side. At the grand reopening, David addressed the crowd. "This dealership will never again be a place where people are judged by the color of their skin, their clothes, or their wallet. Here, respect isn't optional, it's required. And that's the only legacy worth leaving behind." The audience erupted in applause, but as David stepped off the stage, a detective approached him. Detective Mike. Quietly. "Mr. Carter, we've locked up Mark, but there's something you should know. He wasn't acting alone." David froze. "There are bigger names tied to this, powerful people, and they're not happy that you stood your ground." David's smile faded, his calm eyes narrowing, because he knew this fight was far from over.